In this video, I'm going to go ahead and demo just some of the basic front-end client offerings that GoMud has by default out of the box. When you install it, get it running, whether it's on localhost or on your own server, this is essentially how it's going to look, but all of it is customizable, extensible. If you code your own modules and whatnot, they can inject navigational elements and all sorts of effects. This leaderboard is actually a module. Um, GoMud actually comes with some pretty nice things out of the box. It supports Telnet, supports SSH connections. You can customize the ports and all that sort of stuff. But it also comes with a web client that connects via WebSocket. I'll go ahead and demonstrate that here for you. Okay, so the first thing you gotta do is connect to it. It'll go ahead and handle that on its own, and you can log in if you have a login. Let's look at our stat here. Okay, so we've got our character. We've got essentially a whole bunch of panels here that sort of come by default. Actually, there's audio that's playing. So GoMud supports GMCP and MSP for sound and special data payloads. Let me go ahead and turn down the music here. Actually, I guess I'll go ahead and demo this right now. So there's a lot of different sounds that can happen. There's footsteps when somebody walks into the room. There's combat sounds for hits and misses and all that kind of stuff. You can mute them outright. You can mute all sounds if you don't want any sounds. Or you can go ahead and just based on individual sounds, maybe this particular music you found annoying or loud, you can turn that one down. The intro music is what it plays on the splash screen when you connect. So you have a lot of controls here. It'll remember your settings as a user. So let's go ahead and turn off all the sounds for now. That way it won't be interrupting anything as I speak. Some other stuff in the settings while I'm here is you've got control over all these sort of virtual windows here. So for example, over here on the left, you see the character window. I can turn that off if I don't want it. Now it's gone. I can turn it back on. Again, all this is remembered from session to session. Or maybe I don't like how much space they take up. I can go ahead and set one or both to hide or not. So if it's hidden, I mouse over to reveal it, interact with it. But when I mouse away, it's gone. I can actually hide them both, and then you just basically have a giant terminal, except for when you want to look at this stuff. Let's bring those back. Additionally, these panels can be popped out with this little button here, and if you want to just kind of put them all over the place, you're totally welcome to do that and put them wherever you want. Put them back in there right now. You can also reorder them. So if I want this time and date module down here, I can go ahead and slide it down there. Okay, so let's see. Oops, I'm gonna move this back up here. Oops, there we go. Okay, so it looks like the moon's coming up. The GoMud features a day and night cycle, all that kind of stuff. There's also configurations for multiple moons. You can have you can specify all the different animals for various years, and there's a lot of, you can give all the months their own names and decide how many months in a year and all that kind of stuff. Okay, wait, let's go back to the settings and just kind of wrap that up. Okay, so we can go ahead and reset the layout if that's what we want to do, if we kind of messed everything up. It also supports this idea of triggers. All these are scriptable. It looks for patterns, and if it finds them, you can have it do whatever it is you want it to do with that information. For example, if there's gold on the ground, here I'll enable this one. It'll pick up the gold. I'll also have it do a little confetti when that happens, just to demonstrate it. So let's see, if I'll drop some gold on the ground, and when I enter the room and see the gold, it'll hopefully trigger that. Let's see, do I have gold on me right now? Okay, so let's drop 10 gold. Oh, wait, what do I not have? Oh, I spelled gold wrong. Okay, there's 10 gold on the floor. Now if I enter the room, there you go. It immediately picks it up and plays a little confetti animation. Blah blah blah. There's a lot of other little funny things you can do, and you never know. Maybe you want to know when your life is low, or a crit happens, or some specific event. You can get creative with this stuff. Okay, let's go ahead and disable that for now. let's see. Additionally, there's a theme tab. All the themes do is swap out all the colors. So this is sort of the default kind of GoMud green. But there's a bunch of other ones you can pick from if you want to give it a sort of pen and paper look. Um, there's a whole bunch of these. You can kind of see how they look. I like the pink look. Um, but I'm gonna go back to default for the sake of consistency. And finally, there's this little stats page. This is more debugging tool, but it's kind of interesting to see the GMCP as it comes in or changes if you want to know what that last state of it was. This is useful, especially if you're making your own, you know, Mudlet plugins or something like that. Okay, so those are the settings. We don't have to get into any more than that. Um, all this is populated through the GMCP data that gets sent sort of out of band. Now you can see there's two moons rising. Very nice. Okay, so it keeps track of things like all your skills, your jobs, your effects that are currently enacting on you. All the usual kind of stuff that you can get through normal commands in game, but all of these are sort of quick ways to do it. You can click and say, I want to remove it or look at it or what have you, and it'll just issue those commands automatically for you. Let's see, here's what I'm carrying, a little bit about those things. Got a pet here who's carrying one ambrosia potion. It's a mule, so they're good for carrying extra stuff. Pets are sort of a nice feature where it's almost like an accessory that you have to feed constantly, but it empowers you with different skills or utility. And there's a few different things they can do. Hopefully that'll be expanded on quite a bit. We've got this map, this auto mapper. Right now I've obviously explored everything, so it's kind of showing me everything here. But as I move rooms, it'll update and show me moving around. Looks like there's a shop up here. Great, here we are. I can see what's for sale here. You can see, let's see, there's somewhere around here. There's some room stats. Okay, so here's info about the room I'm in. I can kind of see who's here, the armorer. I can go ahead and see what the armorer has for sale. I can look at them. These are all commands that you can just type to do in game. You can also map in game, stuff like that. Then you've got your kill stats. These are just all all quality of life, nice things that you can either add or remove as you please, but they all kind of come by default with it. So that is the web client in a nutshell. Let's go ahead and move over to the web administrative tools. There are a lot of admin tools, which I'll type right here if you want to see. Scroll back too far. Okay, so there's a bunch of admin commands. If I want to spawn items, spawn, a potion. Okay, here's a potion. Great, it spawned it on the ground. I can spawn a mob if I want to do mob spawn. Sentient. Okay, there we go. Sentient fungus has appeared, and there he is. So you can kind of use a lot of these tools for testing in game. There's building tools for in-game building. Lots of different stuff. I mean, you really have to dig in because, as you can see, there's a lot of topics that you can look for help on. Let's go to the admin tool now. Okay, so you have to log in as an admin or a moderator in order to access this, but basically at a glance, the first thing you see are just some basic stats to kind of just see if there's anything, like if you have any memory leaks or something, which, that's the main point of this sort of thing. And then you have all these different navigation tools at the top, and these let you just jump in to modify all sorts of things in the game. If you want to view a user, I'll go ahead and look at my admin account. And you can go in here and modify things about their character if you want. They may have all characters on. You can change their skill levels. You can change their equipment if I want to put something in his offhand. Spells that they have. Do they have a shop? Players can sort of run on-person shops as a traveling salesman kind of thing, where they sell pets or provide buffs as a service, which is like a spell. They can hire out mobs or sell items they own. Any quest progress, which currently isn't shown here because I have no quest progress, although there are quests. This character doesn't have any completed. You can kind of see and modify that, and then here's everything about my pet. Likewise, we can go into mobs and see, let's say I want to edit a rat. I can just go ahead and modify everything I want to know about a rat. Um, what are the chances of dropping items? How many, what are the chances of a rat being an elite version of a rat, which gives them sort of, makes them stronger and changes their, an indicator next to their name saying that they're elite and tougher. There's a bunch of other details here, like you can have mobs that have allegiances to other, within groups of whatever name you want, so that if they share those groups with another mob that's been attacked, they kind of remember for a while and will be angry with you and probably attack you. Or you can just have permanent hatred for different races that they'll always attack. They can issue commands. Here's some examples that it'll select at random whenever it's doing an idle behavior. So, for example, it'll emote. The rat wiggles his nose, or it'll wander around. Sometimes they do that. They can also do things like when they're going into combat. If you want them to say something or say something at random, you can have lots of commands that they can choose from. And then you can do all sorts of commands for combat if you just want them to have sort of special behaviors in the middle of combat. Without having to program advanced AI or something like that, you want to just give them some special things like calling for help and whatnot. They can obviously have buffs. If you want to give them sort of special like regeneration or something like that. There could be things that you may want for like a boss or who knows what. Or even just customizing a particular mob, like you might want to have a troll that gets some particular kind of bonus or even a negative. And then everything else is just a character, so it's a lot like the player character where you can go ahead and edit a lot of those sorts of details, create new mobs if you want. You can go in here and do all that. You can filter down this list by zone if you like. And then let's go over to conversations. And conversations, basically these are just ways to allow mobs to interact with other mobs in ways that players can observe, right? So they can do another thing. They can just have a conversation in words where they speak to one another, and these conversations can be sequenced, but they can also have several different sequences that are randomly selected. Or actually, I don't think they're randomly selected. I think they're round robin selected. So whichever is the least used, it will do that one next, so they don't say the same thing over and over. Let's find. So here's some. If let's see. This one is a guard, and if to any mob, you can specify that, like for example, a guard will only talk to another guard. But in this case, a guard will say to any mob, he will nod, say good day, and whatever that mob is will say good day to you back. So that's what that one. You get the idea. Here's one where this guard will only do this conversation for another guard, a captain of the guard, or a master at arms. And you can see mob number one will say another cold dawn, friend, and then the other mob will adjust their cape and say, this, and then you can have this be as long as you want. They go back, forth, and back. They can actually end with more complex things. It doesn't just have to be speaking. For example, let's see. One of these has here's a good example. Ruffians speaking to other ruffians. They'll have this whole little argument, and then it ends with them attacking each other. So now you've got the mobs getting in a fight, an argument, and then actually entering combat with each other. They can also drop things. They can pick up. You can have them do all sorts of different behaviors. Here's Roderick. So let's see. Okay, not important. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on past conversations. We'll go do a quick once over for pets. I've only got a few default pets defined right now. More will come, but obviously any administrators can define their own in their own MUD. But I'll kind of give an idea of how these work. So this is a pet. It's a cat. They can have so they'll have a default name if you want to. Instead of having it, for example, when they first get this pet, it'll just be called cat. You can give it a different default name if you like. But when a player gets a pet, they can also rename it to whatever they want. And you can also go in here and make it fancy. Like if you want to give it some colorized effects, or give it a pattern, like one of these kind of where it shifts between different hues for each letter. Or you can have it just, for example, I can have it say cat. Maybe I only want the C to be red, and I want the AT to be green. This is going to look dumb, but whatever. And now down here you see a preview. This is how the cat would look. So that gives you an idea. Let's see. There's also these alias color aliases, which I'll get to later, where you can use all over the MUD, anywhere you want like a consistent color for a given thing. For example, wherever I use the alias gold for like gold pieces, money, I know it's if I want to change that color, it'll change everywhere I use that alias. So that's kind of a nice little, where is it? Here, gold, right? So this is used for gold pieces. Usually that's what this alias is, but whatever, it gives it this gold color. And later, what I can do is go through and edit. Instead of having to go through and change all of the colors used for this, I can go and change the color assigned to gold, and it will update across the whole MUD. So this is kind of a useful way to get a little more consistency across your MUD instead of having to constantly handpick ANSI color codes and that sort of thing. Okay, so other things about pets. They can be scripted to do some stuff. And every round you can set a percentage that they'll go ahead and attempt to run that script. They can have different abilities. So the abilities they have is they can do quite a lot for a player. So they can obviously do some unique things like carry stuff. They can help in combat. So if I want to like say every round in combat he has a 30% chance to jump in and help, and how much damage is he going to do? Well, we'll go ahead and say he does, you know, one attack at 1d4 with a +1, and then it'll give you a little bit of a breakdown here for that if you really want. I can also say maybe this pet will give a bonus to any number of, if you have this pet, your smarts go up by 10, right? I can go ahead and do that, and then I can add another one if I want. I can say also your perception goes up by, or I'll say it goes down by 2. Likewise, having this pet can also add a buff, right? So what if I want this pet to sort of reveal things, which actually is the case for the owl. It will reveal certain things in the room that you normally won't be able to see. It'll be in the room description, or it'll just always apply like some kind of drunkenness to you. It doesn't really matter. Anything you want. And every level of a pet, these can change. You can add more. It can shift over time. So as the pet gets better, you can make it more and more useful to the okay. So at a certain level, this cat starts applying shadow eyes, which basically allows the player to see people hidden in shadows. And then it has this sort of down here is where you can edit a script. In this case, the pet act function. This is the one I described at the top, where I said okay, it has a 10% chance. The pet act, it just basically is some JavaScript. It's going to pick a random action every 10% of the time whenever a round passes. It's going to pick a random action and send that to the room. So it'll say like whatever this pet's name is, grooms itself, blah blah blah. So that's and if you want to add there's other script behaviors, and there's a little helper here too, so you don't have to just know all the functions that you want to create. You can actually use this helper to, let's say I want this one, I'll insert it. It'll give a little information on that, and you can populate it with the behavior you want. Okay, so you get the idea there. That's pets. There's probably stuff I'm leaving out, but it's good for a high level. Races. I mean, we all know what those are. Those are, are they human? Are they elf? All that kind of stuff. Sometimes they've been chosen by players when they create a character, but sometimes they can't. Sometimes they're just specific to a mob. So, for example, we have guards, we have shopkeepers, we have all sorts of people can be human, right? But those mobs have a race, and that would be human. Likewise, with all these other kind of races that are defined, and you can define your own. They can be assigned to different mobs, or shapeshifted into in some cases when you're using like a polymorph spell or something like that. So a little bit about this. There's sizes, small, medium, large. The differences are basically, assuming you're not doing custom scripting to do something with the size, the sort of default behavior would be something like, so that there's one-handed and two-handed weapons. A two-handed weapon you wouldn't be able to use a shield with, but if you're a large race, you can hold a two-handed weapon in one hand and have a shield in the other. So that would be a good advantage of being large. Whereas medium, you don't have that, and small, obviously, it's a little bit different. Um, you can customize a lot about the races here. We don't have to get too much into it. You can say, well, this is a race that has a lot of advantages, so I want it to be harder for players to level it up. So change the scale for requirements, experience requirements. When it's unarmed, what's its damage? Here's where I described: is it selectable by players? That's can they create a character with that race? Other little things. Permanent buffs. Again, these are just buffs which you can also add your own, but all these will do is here, let me find a good example where somewhere I do have a troll, I think. Yeah. Okay, so permanent things the troll has is night vision and regeneration. An elf has night vision and superior hearing, and so on. So you can give different races sort of special buffs or effects that are always on them. Likewise, they can have special commands whenever they go into combat. Here, their base stats though. So this is basically saying, you know, as they level, these are the stats that they're going to get naturally. They're going to go up naturally by these amounts. And there's a little bit more about that. It's a little more complicated than just that, but the idea here is you don't want to go off, completely crazy with this stuff, but you can definitely tweak the difference between like an elf here with, a few different stats and then a troll with that it has them completely differently. You can disable slots. So for example, in this case, a troll doesn't have a ring equipment slot. You can define your own equipment slots as well, but we don't need to get into that. There's probably other. Okay, so here's a giant spider. All it has is it has weapon and body. It doesn't have any of these other slots, and so on. So that's basics about races. Then there's a content tab. We can get a little bit into this. So we have items. We all know what items are. They're just the stuff you pick up and use in the game for various purposes. And you can define all sorts of things about them. Again, a lot of the same stuff. Can they modify your stats? Can they apply buffs to you while they're worn? Can you use the item and thereby, for example, illumination, when you actually use this item, if it's usable, it will apply this buff temporarily rather than permanently. Items are also scriptable, so let's see, do I have one that's a good example of a scripted item? I think I do. How about a newbie kit? I think that would be a good example. Let me filter this down. There it is. Okay, so here's a newbie kit. This is something that's given to new players when they start, and it has a script. So when somebody uses this, it's going to go ahead and I've written some code here that it's going to send some text and all whatnot, and it's going to go through all the items and give them to the player. And so, then it destroys the item. So it's just, basically break open the kit and get all the stuff inside. Let's see here. Where was I? Content. Okay. Oh wait, actually we're still in items. So there's also some tools to sort of at a glance see like, this tree trunk is clearly way out of balance compared to any other item, so I need to do something with that. There's other metrics you can look at, but this is just a way to sort of see if like weapons, for example, are just too out of balance, or is the climb, going from one weapon to the next small enough, too big, whatever. Additionally, armor, same idea. There's different ways to look at the data, but it's all here, and it tries to give you useful information to better assess the comparison between items as you're trying to balance your game. Let's see, attack messages. So each weapon type can have attack messages, and it can have more than one. So this can look a little complicated, but basically, depending on what stage or action in combat it is, if they're just preparing for combat, such as they're just indicating, like they type kill mob or whatever, this is what the attacker will see, and it can be chosen at random here, so you can have lots of different ones. What the defender sees and what the room sees, and then if there's some weapons take multiple rounds before, like let's say shooting with a bow, take multiple rounds to before the attack rather than having one attack every round, it might have one attack every 2 rounds. But on that off round, you can have wait messages. So if I go to shooting and look at the wait message, it says, you know, you take a deep breath and line up your shot. So it's not just nothing happening there in the output. When they miss, there's messages. If they hit weakly with normal damage, heavy damage, or even a crit, since there are crits in the game, you can have different messages. Oh yeah, when you mouse over these, you can kind of see what they're going to look like. So I try to give a little preview of the styling of the text. These ANSI tags are something you'll learn, but basically they're just a way to specify colors in different ways. And there's some tools that help you kind of learn it quickly or compose them. Okay, so that's tag messages. You get the idea. Let's see, where was I? Rooms. Okay. We can go through all the rooms. So you can look at an individual room. It has a lot of stuff about it. We don't have to get too deep into it. What are the exits? Where do they lead to? What are some things about this room? For example, what mobs spawn here? Let's find one that has some mob spawns. There's got to be one I can jump to somewhere. Here we go. This dark alley, right? So it spawns a rat every 2 real minutes. When you specify units of time, a lot of times there are several ways you can specify it. If I just said 2 minutes, it would be 2 minutes in game time. Now, one day, I forget, is something like an hour, I think, of real time. So, 2 minutes in game time is very short. It's not 2 minutes real time. So, if I say real minutes, that means this, at least 2 minutes of real world time have to pass before this will happen. And that applies to a lot of stuff throughout this engine. So you'll see there are places where you can specify units of time, and you can say you can say daily, you can say every 1 day, you can say every 1 real day, stuff like that. Let's see here. No, I don't know if there's anything, you can kind of just look at this and see that there's a lot you can do here. Okay, and again, rooms can be scripted, and there's all the sort of functions that apply to a room, like when the room loads into memory, or when somebody enters the room, or when somebody enters a command while in the room. Like let's do on enter, and you see, and once again, it populates it in there and gives you some information about it. You can go ahead and write it up however you want. Nouns are basically, I'll try and find an example of a noun. Let's see here. I don't know which of these rooms actually has nouns, so that's a little tough. Well, anyway, nouns are just things that players can look at, and oftentimes it's useful to have them be mentioned in the room description. There's a statue, and then if you create a noun here and say, I want to add a statue here, like so, the statue is made of granite. Okay, you get the idea. So that means if they look at the statue, they're going to see this message, and you can create as many of those as you like. And there are lots of places in here that do that. I just don't know which rooms they are. And let's see. Okay, let's just and there's zones. There's each zone has all rooms belong to a zone, and zones can have their own properties that can either be automatically applied to all rooms within them if those rooms don't overwrite them, or they can just be a very basic container. But you can specify the music that plays when players there if they're going through the web client or what have you. What biome is it? There's some auto scaling functionality. So like if you want to have mobs spawn that you don't want to specify the level for every mob that spawns, but you can say I want it to, all mobs that spawn in this zone are going to be between these levels. Idle messages are just random messages that play in the zone, no matter what room someone is in, and so on. Okay, so the mapper. So the mapper is a tool which, let's go to, okay. So this is just an example of the default overworld map. This is a tool that lets you go ahead and you can, click on a given room and see its details and edit lots of the details here. Or if you want, you can jump to that edit room for that particular room. You can also do some quick building here. So like if I want to like right click somewhere and say I want to create a room here, great, now I've got a room, and I can continue to do that wherever else, or you can discard all of your changes. That's gone. And Yeah, it's just a tool that lets you go ahead and quickly build out a room. There's other tools like let's see, quick build. So if I want to just like you know do something like this, and then I can go back and fill in the details for all the rooms. Um, Also, you can kind of see how this is all. Let me discard these changes for now. Okay, this is all on one sort of Z level, right? This is like the main Z level. But there's stuff below the city, for example. If I zoom in a little bit here, and then I look under the city, there's the catacombs down here, and there's some stuff over here, and so on. Um, so these lines kind of indicate like rooms that are not connected via conventional means, but they are connected. Um, there's a lot of color codes about what all these different things mean, such as if it has a red box around it, that means it's a room with a mob spawn. If it's got a gold one, it's a room with a script. Rooms that have tags, which are special things for modules to attach to, such as fishing, right? So all these like water spaces you can fish at with the fishing module. Um, this is a fairly in-depth tool. It does a lot of cool stuff. It's a way to quickly build a lot of stuff. And let's see here. Let's go back up. Boy, it's going to take forever to get through all this. Mutators are just essentially things that can be applied to rooms either temporarily or permanently or on some particular event or what have you, and they'll modify the text of the room. Maybe they'll apply different buffs. They can, for example, let's say I have one that's a wildfire. And then what a wildfire will do is potentially spread to other areas, and it will make the whole room look like it's got this flame effect. All the text will look red and orange, and it'll say there's a fire burning here. And you say this a wildfire is burning here, um, and so on. And it sort of decays over time, and then after 10 minutes of in-game time, not real time, in this case, it will then decay into this mutator, which is wildfire scorched, which means now the text that it Okay, sorry about that. My headset ran out of power there, but now the text that shows there, it'll say the land is scorched from a recent fire, and these can actually modify other aspects of the text. It can modify, the header text of the room or the actual text of the room, or it can append stuff to the end or add alerts to the room and all that kind of stuff. There's some interesting things that this can be used for. It can add temporary exits to a room. For example, I have this pushed boulder mutator, and when it's applied to a room, it'll a pathway will appear. Let's try to go a little quicker here. Where was I? Mutators. Okay, biomes are just things you can define the aspects of a given biome, which of course zones use. Spells. Oh, wait, no, buffs. Okay, buffs are essentially effects. So these are things like um, modifiers to your stats of all sorts of stats, or modifiers to your skills, or behavioral flags that may, you can have night vision or you're drunk, so things look different, etc. And they can be scripted as well to give different messages or behaviors. Again, all of the useful stuff is here. Spells, well, they're just what you think. They're things that the players cast, and they have a mana cost, and they have a certain wait time and difficulty. But when they get cast, the script runs, and it can do whatever you want, or it can even apply a buff or whatever. Like in the case of, let's see, well, okay, in the case of polymorph, it chooses a random form and changes them into that race temporarily. In the case of minor heal, let's see, somewhere in here, it just adds health to them. It chooses a random amount of health and adds it to them every. It's gonna cast. Okay, so yeah, so when it casts, it basically heals them for a random amount of health. Illuminate. What does that do here? Okay, it gives them a buff. So it applies oh wait, it says heal here, but actually the buff one I believe is a lit illumination effect that allows them to see in dark rooms and whatnot. Um, okay, so let's see. Quests. Quests are, kind of complicated to set up. I don't want to get too deep into it, but basically you can have multi-stage quests with progress, and it's all managed through here. There's some telemetry. So these are things that are tracked. You know, basically just some basic useful stuff that might be worth looking at if you're curious, like how many players have logged in today or over a given period of time, or you can drill down on some of these things like you want to know what items are constantly being picked up. Here's a breakdown. Boy, these rat pelts are they're very common. They're dropping a lot, or by zone, by room, and so on. Character creations, along with breakdowns. What were the races people are picking? Um, what are people searching for in the help files? What are they looking up a lot? And stuff like that. That's basically what that's useful for. This is purely a performance page, so this is just to kind of know like where your memory is going. You're probably never going to use this, but it is useful when you're doing actual coding and development to know if you have some sort of a memory leak or what have you. Um, okay, so let's go to settings. It's this is where you have a lot of control over stuff. So settings, I mean, there are a lot of settings. So, this is all stored to a config file and you can edit it and we don't have to get too deep into it, but you can really get detailed about, how you want this game to behave. Everything from how long a round lasts to is there permadeath? Are there lives? Or not? Do they lose? What do they lose, if anything, when they die? What are the protected levels when they die before, so they won't lose anything? What's the experience curve, and so on. And there's some tools that make this a little easier. For example, if you don't know the exact stat or what it is you want to do, there's a config wizard. And the purpose of this is to help kind of guide you through setting up different things. So if I want to focus on the death settings and go in here, it'll give you a little more information. I can tweak it or whatever. Go through each of the settings related to death and either change them or skip them. And it'll tell you, hopefully, how to make an educated decision about adjusting this. And you get the idea. Okay, so these are all of that. There's a lot of them to change, and you can do it all from here if you want. I'm not going to get too deep into this, but just to demonstrate it, there is a very information dense but useful tool to modify everything from the experience leveling curves to the stat gain curves, and even sort of compress the stats if in this case they are by default, but you can always remove that. But as you can see, their stats would normally kind of continue in this linear fashion, but at a certain point after 105 it starts growing much slower, much slower. So rather than be way up here where it would normally be like 213, it's actually just 121. So after about 100, and you can adjust all that here, you can really tweak all of these curves. And as you change them, let's see, oh, that's up there, it's reflecting up there. You can kind of see how these will live update so that you can see, um, how they're actually affected. How, do they get training points and stat points and how often, all that kind of stuff. It's all adjustable here. But yeah, like I said, it's a lot of information here. You can actually mouse over all of these to get more information about what they're going to actually affect and why you would want to change them or not. So the default game calendar, right? You've got zodiacs, and there's a whole bunch of animals I've kind of loaded in here by default, but you can remove them or add your own. It could be year of the horse, year of the possum, what have you. The name of all the months. So every month, as new days arrive, you'll get an update to the date, and this is what it'll tell the players. This is how many rounds are in a given day. So 900 rounds turns out to be about an hour. So an in-game day cycle is 1 hour real time in this case, and you can tweak all of this. How many suns are there? How many moons are there? That's just, it really right now just affects how it shows up in that the web interface. Audio is it's still being worked on. This is not the best tool. It still needs some work, but it does allow for a little bit of adjustment in previewing these sounds that come by default. Um, you get the idea. Uh, this tool is probably one of the ones most in need of additional work. Um, Panels are just ways to have sort of preset layouts. So like if I want to know what the stat screen layout is, where is it? The status, there we go. So, with the player stats, their info, attributes, wealth, etc. There's a system to this and how to specify it, and you can kind of see a preview of what it would look like. Um, and we can go to oops, color patterns. So these are just these are embers would be a keyword that you could use to apply a color pattern to a set of text. Here's some examples. So if I look at flame, this is how the flame text looks when a room is on fire. You can get, imagine the whole room description looking like this. And you can create your own patterns as well if that's what you want. These are color aliases. I mentioned this before, so everywhere I use the word gold will just be the specific color. The message crafter is just a tool to let you, it's just to help you if you don't have everything memorized on how to do. Let's see, let's make the background color this. Okay, you get the idea. You can craft your own little ANSI things, and then you can copy this and put it wherever you want. That's all this is for. This is just a little helper tool. Keywords. This gives you basically control over a lot of stuff. What shows up when somebody types help, or if they type help and then a subject aliases. So if they type help deposit, it really will just go to help bank. If they type help withdraw, it'll just go to bank, etc. Um, all of the stuff here is what shows when they type help. So you can add things that aren't necessarily commands if you want to just have subjects for them to look up help files. Command aliases. So for example, to attack is the command, but there are aliases A, K, kill, fight. These are all automatic aliases that when used will just actually be attack. You can assign as many as you want. Direction aliases will probably never change, but basically D for down, E for east, and so on. And the legend overrides is a map-based thing you don't have to worry about right now. It's not really worth getting into. Um, Modules are just basically standalone things that can plug into the main game engine, but the game engine doesn't know about them. And most of them have some kind of configuration or details about them. We'll go to zombie mode if you want. I can say, will I allow zombie mode? Zombie mode is a way for players to basically idle, but they'll still go around attacking stuff and picking up stuff, and they have commands they can do and whatnot. So they can set waypoints or or just set it to randomly roam, that sort of thing. Um, and if you go to about, it'll tell you a little bit more about the module. There are a lot of different modules defined currently. If you want to know about elections, for example, you can go in here and say, how often do elections happen, and how long does it take to actually complete an election, that sort of thing. Let's see, where's elections? I can go through and audit the existing. So there's no elected officials at the moment. Elected officials can do things like set a tax rate. So anytime something is purchased in that zone, some of that money is taxed and goes into a fund for the city that the elected official has access to, the coffer. And there's a bunch of other modules too. So there's, fishing and gambling and all this sort of stuff. They can be any here. GMCP is a module, so there's things about that can be configured. Auctions and game auctions that are like you can have somebody auction off an item that's system wide that people can participate in, and so on. And then there's the docs tab, and what this will do is hopefully give a lot of documentation help to understanding how to write scripts on items, on mobs, on buffs, on spells, on pets, and all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of documentation here that if you really are interested in, you can go through it and see like what an actor object can do. Um, party objects, and so on. Uh, let's see what else. That's scripting. There's a little bit of information about creating your own module. This gets a lot more technical and how to write a module. And then there's just a little help for setting up backups in AWS if that's something you want. Okay, so that's about it. Oh, and of course, as usual, you can set a theme here. So if you're, you know, if there's a look that you like, you can go ahead and choose that. And um, you know, anyway, you get the idea. Hope this is helpful, and I'll upload this to YouTube, um, and I hope it'll inspire people to maybe give GoMud a try.